John Donvan, a preliminary question. This has to be confronted at the start of this debate tomorrow night. Wouldn't you agree? They don't have opening statements, but if you were moderating, like you do at Intelligence Squared, wouldn't you deal with it initially?
I think it's absolutely top of mind. I think, in fact, probably it's possible that more people will watch this debate even than the first one, which would be unprecedented. And there's no way that either Anderson Cooper or Martha Raddatz, whoever goes first, is not going to be able to put that question to Donald Trump. The question is, what's the question to Hillary Clinton?
Todd, Donald Trump suggested at the end of that videotaped apology that he's going there. Is that a wise strategy?
No, that's a terrible debate strategy. This is something that could only paint Hillary Clinton in a more positive and empathetic light. Listen, Hillary Clinton doesn't get a lot of empathy from people, but if Donald Trump thinks that his latest troubles should be painted toward Hillary Clinton in some way, then I think that's a horrible mistake. He'll be sealing his own fate.
But, John, you know, to his stalwarts, they love the argument that she is an enabler, that she was dismissive or worse of the women that Bill had relationships with. I think he's being encouraged to play that card. He's been threatening that for a long time.
Yeah, but that doesn't take into account what's actually going to happen on Sunday night. This is the town hall format of debate, which, interestingly enough, was initiated at the request of Bill Clinton back in 1992. This is a debate where members of the public, undecided voters, are on the stage asking questions of the candidates. It's not really a debate thing. They're interviewing the candidates one after the other. And we're going to see their faces, unlike the other debates. We're going to see how they react. And these regular citizens who are undecided are not there to provoke an argument, a soap opera kind of argument about marital infidelities in one marriage or the other. They're there with really serious concerns. We can already see the questions that they're lining up to ask, things like what happens to Social Security. And if Donald Trump comes out wanting to use this opportunity to sort of soil the conversation with a discussion of marital infidelity, I don't think that that's going to work with this particular group of voters, and I think we're going to see it on their faces, and it's going to hurt Donald Trump.
So, Todd, you think it's a mistake if he is to play, I'll call it the Bill card. How about the WikiLeaks release? How about relying on the fact that, as per the WikiLeaks information, she delivered speeches to Wall Street, including her embracing some concept of open borders in the future?
Sure, but you don't bring them up at the same time, right? Donald Trump has a lot of problem with false equivalency. So he shouldn't say, well, why don't you ask about this? He needs to, if the topic of his discussions and what he's talked about in the last day, if that leak comes up, then he just has to apologize and move on. But later in the debate, when other topics come up, yes, he should talk, right? One of his mainstays is to talk about free trade. Another mainstay is terrorism and how our borders are too open. All of that is fair game with what just came out in WikiLeaks. But you have to do it one thing at a time. He can't try to mesh those two ideas together.
Hey, John, yours is Oxford-style debating, and what I love about it is you vote at the outset of the debate, and then you vote again when the debate has ended. And the key here to declaring victory is who changed the most minds? Here's my question. Are any minds up to be changed tomorrow night?
Yeah, the minds of the 40 people who are on stage who are selected by the Gallup organization because they are undecided. And again, I want to say those people are brave to be put into this situation. They are nervous. They are working on their questions. They're wondering if they're going to be called on. And more importantly, they're coming with, in the past, they've come with questions like, how do I know you'll keep your promises? Or will my Social Security still be there or not? These people are really looking for help in making up their minds. So yes, they are there to be persuaded, and they're going to be listening. And by proxy, perhaps people out there who will be listening, I'm sure now by the tens of millions, may also be persuaded. I think tomorrow night may be, again, I'm not going to call it a debate, it's an interview. I'm going to think it's the most important interview in the careers of either of these candidates.
Hey, Todd, final question. When you remove that podium, you know, you're exposing the candidates. Speak to the dynamic of not being able to shield yourself.
Yeah, let me talk about the power of momentum, too. I think John's right, but the people at home, if Hillary Clinton wins this debate, given how momentum is going, because I coach debates all the time, and momentum happens in debates, then I think that there can be even more voters swayed, because if Donald Trump loses 2 debates badly, there's no way he's going to be able to get that as many independent votes as he needs. Now, in this debate, you have to practice standing up and moving around just like you would in the real debate. This is almost like a theater in the round, and if you haven't practiced it, you end up looking very awkward. You have moments like Al Gore did when he tried to man up against W, and that didn't work out too good. You have moments like McCain when he wandered around and spun around like he was looking for a missing toddler. You honestly have to practice this. You can't just expect you'll be good at it.